Call the meeting to order. We're in our regular August board meeting here tonight, and I show 7:01. Debbie, if you would note attendance, please. I assume Debbie, can you hear me, Debbie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right, just a quick reminder too. So during public comment, there's a couple of ways you can go about sort of raising your hand, if you will. One of them is to email Debbie and/or Drew that you're interested in speaking to us. That's really helpful, especially if it's in advance, because it kind of helps us to understand and kind of cue things up a little bit. However, you can do it right at the time as well by emailing. That's the best option. If you end up using the ask a question or whatever the feature is in Zoom that's like that, we will be on the lookout for that as well. But you know, it's best if you email ahead. Okay, with that, we're going to jump into our flag salute, which I know is interesting virtually, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. Right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, first up, we have our consent agenda. It was published on Board Book, consists of the minutes from July 27th, as well as approving the employment of a handful of folks within the district. That's all available on Board Book for the board members to see. At this point, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I second it.
Thank you, Tom. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
When I was reviewing, and I've already shared this with Debbie, and so I'm not sure if she made the changes yet or not, but in the meeting minutes for July 13th, it references the first two motions, and the meetings indicate that those motions were passed unanimously, and they were not passed unanimously. And it does indicate which votes were for and against, but then it just says motion passed unanimously. So it's a small change just to be internally consistent.
The changes will be made.
Thanks, Debbie.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. Let's see. We can't see Irv. So Debbie, can we do the roll call approach tonight, please?
Yes. Jonathan?
Aye.
Janet?
Yes.
Lori? Thumbs up, Lori, down. There we go. Jennifer?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Irv?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right. Well, very quickly to our first public comment. I will read our introduction. And again, if you're interested in speaking, and I know we have one at least, but if you're interested, let Debbie or Drew know. Now would be great. So we are glad you're here and welcome you to address the board at this time with your ideas, opinions, questions, concerns, or compliments. Let's see. We all model the way for our students, and we ask that you share your thoughts in a respectful way. The board's role during public comment is to listen. Rarely will you get an immediate response to information. There is follow-up necessary. We will direct our superintendent to do that. In order to ensure equity among speakers, the board will limit remarks to 3 minutes per individual. If a group of 3 or more wishes to appoint a representative to speak on its behalf, the board will extend the time for remarks to 5 minutes. And there is planned a second public comment later in the agenda specific to discussion and action items of the meeting. Great. Well, I'm going to mute myself, and I suppose, Drew, you'll probably be sort of orchestrating here during this period, please.
Sure. People can email Debbie or Drew, or put a Q&A question, or click on their name and put their hand up and enable it to talk.
And just a reminder that I have the reminder cards, and I'll flash those up when the time is when there's 30 seconds left and when time's up.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I believe we have one for sure, Drew. Are there any others queuing up?
No hands up, no Q&As.
Well, I believe Oriana had asked, is that correct?
Sorry, I'm so new
Yes,
to
better
Zoom
so,
through
can you
school,
guys know?
so I'm just still trying to figure out how to work Zoom. I can start whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay. I have grown up in the Silver Falls School District. I went to Eugene Field, Robert Frost, Mark Twain, Silverton Middle School, and this will be my last year at Silverton High School. Here are a short list of the incidents that has happened through my childhood experiences. In third grade, it was the first time that I was aware that I was different because kids in the classroom made it very clear that I was not like them, using the color of my skin as a barrier. In fourth grade, my teacher said that my hair, being in an afro, which is my natural curls, was so distracting, so I permanently straightened my hair, and that damaged my hair for the next 6 years of my life. In fifth grade, we were reading a book about an African American, and it stated the N-word. And my teacher not only allowed herself, but the other students to say it. In sixth grade, if I did not put on lotion, kids would willingly write on my skin to tease me. My freshman year in English class, we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and a student said, "Black people are like raccoons, and we should shoot them." No consequences to that student happened. During that entire unit, students would say hurtful things, and nothing was done. Sophomore year in my AG, a couple students said the N-words multiple times to my face, and when I was asked to be removed from my AG, it took my school 3 months until they even recognized that I was upset. They made me have a meeting with my AG teacher to explain why I wanted to be moved out of this AG. In the middle of my sophomore year, a group of boys created a group chat making fun of Black people. I was the one being talked about in it. During Black History Month, me and my friends made a bulletin board and took time out of our school schedule for Black excellence, and we left it alone for 30 minutes and it was vandalized. I would have racist slurs being said to me through the halls in SHS during passing times. Me and my friends tried to create a club this year that would give people of color a safe space to be able to share their experiences and talk about it in our school, and our school admin declined it because it wasn't including white people. I believe I remember reading something about zero tolerance for bullying. Does racism not fall under the same category that bully does? I ask you, what are you going to do next year to help me succeed and my fellow African American students and our school district? How are you going to prevent these experiences that I had from happening to anyone else that is growing up in this school district? How are you going to make my last year at Silverton High School not the same as my entire K through 11 experience? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. Drew, has anybody else requested to speak tonight?
Hands, no Q&A.
Okay. Well, Oriana, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It's a really important message, and I know it took a lot of courage to say it, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me a platform to be able to speak my truth. I appreciate it, you guys.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate you, Oriana. Thank you.
Okay, well, with no further public comment, SFEA, you are up. Is Michelle online?
She was. I'm working on it.
Okay.
Welcome, Michelle.
There we go. Hi guys, good evening.
Hello.
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow up just automatically, but it kind of gives me a few other things to add to my list actually of what I might talk about tonight. So first of all, welcome to August. This is the time of year that teachers are already, busy getting ready for the next year and usually working on putting our classrooms together and figuring out just what things are going to look like. And obviously this year that looks entirely different. And so, it feels really good for me personally to know that our district has a solid plan for the fall. And I've heard that from a lot of teachers since the district made the call to start online. I've heard disappointment from people, just in like disappointment in not being with their kids in person. And I honestly am not quite sure how to build a virtual relationship with kids, but I think that that's a challenge that we're up for and that we're going to work really hard to figure out the answer to. But the thing that I heard the most from people is just a sense of relief with that decision being made, and just giving the district a little bit more time, to figure out what in person would look like during this crazy time that we're living in. So I just wanted to say that. For SFEA, obviously our biggest concern in all of this is advocating for the health and safety of our members and our students. And we really feel that, that the health and safety of the adults in the building is just as important as the students. And that is something that, that benefits the kids. If the adults in the room are safe, that benefits the kids as well. And so when you hear from us, a lot of times it'll be coming from a perspective of, what is safest for the adults, because that's who I'm here to advocate for specifically. But that's not to say that we're not thinking about the kids in every decision we make, in every aspect of what we are advocating for. So that said, our executive team met this morning and we have started working on an MOU document to share with the district for the changes that will need to occur in our contract language to cover this change in working conditions. And so our hope is to get that to Scott and Dan, hopefully by the end of this week. I'm going to be spending some more time this week working on it. I know Allison and Leah put in a lot of time this afternoon working on it, and we all 5 met together this morning. Sarah put together a compilation document for us that was really helpful. And, and Frank took time out of his Montana vacation to meet with us and to go over all of the details. So it was a pretty productive meeting this morning, and I'm feeling confident that we should be able to have that first draft to the district, hopefully by Friday, if not by Monday. Another thing that has just been really positive for us and that we're really appreciative of is Scott and Dan's dedication to meeting with us weekly for labor management. That was Scott's idea, to make it weekly during the summer so that they can be giving us those updates regularly. And prior to that, Dan was doing a really good job of just, informally updating me on things. And as they came up. And so we really, really appreciate the time that you guys have taken to communicate with us and just to hear, hear what we're thinking and hear our concerns. And so that has been really a positive experience. And so we just wanted to let the board know that these two guys, they're doing a good job and they're working their tails off, and that has not gone unnoticed. So please give them some props too. And let's see. Oh, okay. So Oriana's address to you guys tonight just kind of brought up something that I've been thinking a lot about, and that our SFEA members have been thinking about over the summer. And that's just that's the idea of using an equity lens or an equity filter for our decision-making process. And I know that that's something that you guys as a board have adopted for our district. And I think that that's an awesome step. I just wanted to let you know that I'm planning to start implementing that with our SFEA groups as well. So when we are making decisions, when we're talking as an executive board, or when we're talking in our building rep groups, I am planning to starting in our first meeting, just to kind of talk about an equity filter that we can use to make sure that we really are looking at things from all perspectives and making sure that we have the best interests of all of our students in mind. And so that is something that I spent a lot of time last week. So sorry, this is kind of a little rabbit trail, but in the spring, I actually ran for an OEA regional position, and I was elected. And so I am now the Region 2 Vice President for OEA, which is the Oregon Education Association, for anyone who doesn't know that. So with this position, I am now a representative of 8 different UNISERV councils. So if you've ever met Evan, he is our UNISERV rep, and he serves 13 different local districts around our area. And so I am going to be working now with 8 of those different councils. And this is in addition to my regular teaching job and my work with SFEA. But I'm really excited to kind of dive deeper into this advocacy work and just to get to know different educators from across the state. And so I now sit on the OEA executive board and also the OEA board of directors. And so we spent a lot of time last week meeting. We had meetings every day last week. And the equity filter was something that OEA uses. And so that kind of got my ideas moving for how we can implement that here within our own association. So obviously looking at our district's equity filter or equity lens, and then OEAs as well. And SFEA will probably spend some time kind of creating our own based on those 2 different equity filters. So yeah, so I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys so that you know kind of what's going on with me a little bit. So if I ever have any conflicts, I might have to have one of the other members of our executive board address you guys, but I'm hoping to continue to be that person who will give this update every month. So I think that's all I had to talk about tonight. Thank you once again for your time, and yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Your perspective is always appreciated, and the shout out to Scott and Dan. You know, we've seen the same thing, right? They've been on it and working really hard for everybody this fall. So, okay. Well, thank you. Right. We are about ready to move into our discussion items for tonight. We have several. The first one is our superintendent evaluation timeline. We spoke to this at our July work session. Sarah Herb was presenting it along with sort of what they have to offer as far as services. And, there was quite a bit of discussion, but I think where we off was let everybody kind of think about it. We would bring it back tonight and consider adopting the timeline and the consideration of whether we want to utilize the OSBA evaluation tool set as well. And Jennifer, I know you're kind of our designated point person on this. Would you like to share updates or kind of lead this discussion?
I think that the ideas that I want to put forth are probably better towards the end of our discussion. So I think that we could just proceed on general discussion about the timeline and the tool.
Okay. Well, a couple of minor points I'll mention, and then Janet, I saw your hand go up, and then I'll grab you. So for everybody's knowledge, we do all of the evaluations in open session. And as a result, I asked Sarah, do we need to update that timeline specifically because it calls out executive session? She suggested we do not update that draft timeline accordingly because we can always go to open session, but having it mentioned that gives us that option if should we choose to change course at any point. So that was her recommendation. And I'll just share that with you guys so that you're aware. Beyond that, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And go ahead, Janet.
No, I was just going to ask, and I actually almost sent you an email, and then I potentially answered my own question, and I didn't. So the document that we had in the packet is the timeline, and my email was to ask, well, do we also have in the packet the evaluation process and the standards? And then I was reading through the timeline, and I thought, well, maybe this is the process, right? Because it sort of sets out all of the action steps. And then I guess I'm asking to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. And then the standards, I believe what we decided was that, as is often done, that for the first year, we follow the standards that they already have created. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding that, because I was looking for 2 other documents and didn't find them and wondered maybe it's all captured here. So a clarification would be helpful.
It's a great question and clarification. I think in my mind, I guess because those were already sent to us, I mean, maybe they weren't just re-added to board book, but they are certainly part of this conversation for sure.
Okay. Okay. So we sort of mentally refer back to the other documents that Sarah shared with us with regard to the evaluation processes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think they're all pertinent for sure.
So Janet, what to, like the evaluation tool, I get that, the standards. What was the other document that you thought would need to be included?
So on the first item on our timeline here that was in our packet says, board superintendent review the evaluation process, standards, and timelines to be used this school year. Board formally adopts all of these in open session, which I took to mean tonight because the date's 8/10. And I was looking for, well, if I have the timeline in my hand, where's the evaluation process and the standards?
I think it's all in one.
Right.
So it's all in this timeline, basically
I think so.
reflected here? Okay. Okay.
And I think that, when we move to adopt, we should also specify the standards, the OSBA superintendent evaluation standards, just to, because I'm not sure if they're expressly listed in that.
I don't think they are. I don't think they are. Yeah.
It would be smart of us to include that in our motion.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have those handy. I could probably pull them up, but if you or someone else has them handy and we can review them, that would be great.
So I want to make sure I understand. So those are the OSBA standards. You want to review them tonight before we would consider them? Or I didn't know if you meant tonight or later or what you meant exactly.
Oh, just to read them out. So that everyone's has a sort of a refresher. Again, my preference would have been that it was in the packet so we could have it in front of us when we vote to approve it. But we don't have that, and I think Jennifer was suggesting that we could possibly just read them out. I don't think they were very long. Or if, I suppose we could pull it up on
Depends on if you can go to the high level or the detailed level, because the detailed level, I think, had sub-bullets. There were pages and pages.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I've got them up now. We could, I'm not sure reading every sub idea is Sounds good to me, but
And I don't anticipate any problem with them. I don't have any, when we went over them last time, I was fine with all of it. So I'm not objecting to any of it. It's just, it's difficult
Transparency.
to vote when we
Yeah.
don't look at what we're voting on. Yeah.
I can flash it on the screen, and there are 3 or 4 bullets, it seems, on each one. So I can do that, Jonathan, if that's allowable, feasible.
I mean, if that helps anybody, I certainly support it. You know, I can appreciate what Janet's saying. So.
So let me go ahead and I'll share my screen. So standard 1 was visionary district leadership. Standard 2 is ethics and professional norms. Standard 3 is inclusive district culture. Standard 4 is culturally responsive instructional leadership and improvement. Standard 5 is communication and community relations. Standard 6 is effective organizational management. Standard 7 is effective financial management. Standard 8 is policy, governance, and advocacy. And we agreed that we would not have goals this first time because we're starting, our timeline is shortened this year.
Right. Awesome.
So hopefully that's
Thank you.
helpful.
That's really helpful. That's a good refresher. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jen.
Anybody can stop me from sharing it. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Irv, Tom, Lori, any thoughts or comments? Jennifer, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I promoted the idea of having a consultant help us craft the narrative that goes along with the evaluation. And one board member was hesitant during the work session, and I'm not sure why. I was going to ask if there were some thoughts from others, and maybe it just seemed logical to me that we contract with the organization that created the tool, but I'm wondering if there are other ideas for consultants. Just thoughts from the group about that.
Jennifer, could you clarify what you mean by the narrative that goes
So,
along with the evaluation?
That is the evaluation, basically. So we have that written piece that we deliver to Scott. And so having a consultant help us, what's a good word, distill all of our thoughts into a narrative that is actionable and makes sense and is good for the superintendent's professional development.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I think one piece that I'm guessing it plays into their recommendation for having somebody assist, especially that first year, but partly because I think it's normally done in exec session and then that document is shared in open session. So there's a really high level of importance on getting it accurate, making sure people's thoughts are reflected accurately, things like that. One thing that is different, I think, for us is while I agree that we need to make sure we distill it accurately, the entire conversation is a matter of public record at that point. So it may have a somewhat of a different, I don't know, necessity maybe, right? It may not be as necessary, although I'm certainly in support of it.
I thought I had those same thoughts,
That's a general
Jonathan,
thought.
after Scott requested that we have all of the evaluation work be an open session. And it still makes sense to me, though, that we have the one voice, and having somebody help us take the 7 voices and find the commonality makes a lot of sense to me, because we need to speak with one voice, and having a consultant, I think, would be beneficial for us.
Yeah.
Would they facilitate the conversation as well and the process? Is that what you're imagining, or would they just help us craft the written outcome?
Well, I think that's a good question that we can decide on that, but I'm assuming it would be the whole process based
Okay.
on what I've seen OSBA do in our superintendent searches, is that they really facilitate the entire discussion and help us efficiently yet robustly get to the point that we need to get to.
Mhm.
Other thoughts, comments?
Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah, I wasn't here at the work session, so I don't, I'm certainly in favor of opening up the process. I guess I'm unsure about the need for a consultant, Jennifer, and I wasn't here to hear that discussion. So I apologize for catching up a little bit. I guess I would be for it if this newer process, if the chair had problems crafting one. But I mean, it's just, once again, another consultant, I don't think that'd cost too much, but it would, it'd just be another additional cost. And I would like to think that if the individual board members had more input and kind of got to proofread, or just, more input on the statement, I'd like to think that might alleviate some of the concerns of the previous process. But I guess I'm not sure that there's a problem that a consultant needs to solve right now. Is there, I could see it developing into one possibly, but I don't know if we're to that point yet, but yeah.
This doesn't have to be decided tonight, Tom.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't have to be decided tonight, and you can go back and look at the video
Yes.
and see what you think.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear what the hesitancy would be, and yes, obviously cost is something that we need to think of, but to me it's an investment in our relationship with Scott, and that's something that I guess I would be more willing to create an expenditure for.
Sure. Yeah. I'll watch that. I guess you could say, yeah, you could definitely say that I'm hesitant on the consultant part of it, just because I don't see it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's broke, yeah, then let's fix it, and possibly, but I don't see if it's something that doesn't work, then bring in some help. That's my hesitancy. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for spearheading the new process.
Oh, I don't think I've done anything special at this point, but
Well,
I point taken.
Yeah.
Yes, Jan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the one thing you said, Jennifer, that I do find compelling is being able to take what we might produce as more sort of qualitative, anecdotal examples of things, and being able to really drill those down into actionable things that Scott feels like I can actually do something with this feedback. And I think that would be really helpful. So thank you for sort of describing it that way, because I think that might be a compelling reason to really consider it.
Yeah, well said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, tonight, really what we're trying to aim for is a decision, I think, on the timeline, which we have in draft form. And I think a corollary to that is whether we're planning to utilize the OSBA tool and processes that kind of go along with said timeline. So, at this point, if anybody was looking to make a motion, I would certainly entertain them.
Maybe we should take it in two motions, one to adopt the tool and two to adopt the timeline. Does that make sense?
Certainly reasonable to me.
Okay, so I'll look at the
I'm sorry
exact name.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are we supposed to do that later in the agenda under action items?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Probably.
yeah. Good point.
Thank you, Janet.
Gives us some time.
Gives us some time. Any further discussion? All right. Oh, Lori? Yep.
Yeah, I feel interesting the same way as Tom. I feel that if we're hiring a consultant to help us, I guess, run it through a colander and narrow it down to its core, I would almost like to see if we could handle that as a board, just for the proper discourse and engagement before a consultant is needed. But that's just my 2 bits. I think also it's because of the cost as well. So just my opinion.
Yeah, fair, well said and fair enough. I think those are legitimate considerations. I think as chair, there's a little bit of almost comfort that would come from somebody guiding us through it under this new tool, the new process, the new everything the first time. So that's sort of one perspective that I have, just because, might be flying a little bit blind into it, although I think we could probably do it as well. Okay. With that, I think we're going to move into 6B, School Safety Blueprint, and Mr. Scott Drew is going to present.
Great. So we sent out the link to all the school reopening plans to you all on Friday. So you've had the weekend to kind of go over those, and this is kind of a time for you to ask questions, give feedback. I wanted to start out by saying thank you to Janet Alenak for really being with us, for most, if not almost all of the presentations that we did at the central office. And Janet, you've certainly been a very good thought partner to me too, and I hope that continues for a long time. Now, keep in mind that even though we've changed plans from going to a full reopening hybrid model down to a comprehensive distance online model, those plans are still 100% good, right? So the minute we can bring kids back to school, back to brick and mortar buildings, those hybrid plans will be implemented. And so even with the last bit of Governor Brown's guidance, those plans have been updated to reflect that. So they're all in one central location. We're at the stage now for you to give input on those plans. And then after tonight, we're going to go forward with the next step, which is to post them on our website publicly. And then they'll be approved and the public can see them. So this is your chance to ask any questions, voice any concerns you might have, any questions that you have for me. I have my staff here as well. Happy to answer any questions, but we're also interested to hear your input as well. Hey, Jennifer.
I just was maybe hoping for an overview for the people in the audience who might not understand the process that the building level plans went through.
Sure. So just like in the presentation I did at the last board work session, that was around the hybrid models. In fact, we found out the following day that we needed to push those to the side and then go with an online model. So right now, this all started back in May or June. We knew that OD had come out with its first bit of guidance on what we needed to prepare for in the fall. At that point, we didn't know that we were going to come back in a hybrid model. We thought we were going to come back to school. So, so principals went about putting together their advisory committees, and the district put together advisory committee as well, made up of teachers. You were on that committee, Jennifer, as well. nurses, some classified staff, and started giving feedback to principals and administrators as they started working through what was called the blueprint. And the blueprint is sectioned out with some responsibilities for the district in terms of systems to keep kids safe, making sure that we are able to implement things like contact tracing, and we're able to isolate students who may be exhibiting symptoms and have a plan for that. Our huge shout out to our nurses who put together an 18-page document, which is what we call our COVID-19 response plan. And all of the building level things that principals and their teams have been working on, having to do with student flow in the building, to cohort sizes, to how we're going to serve meals, to transportation and what that will look like. And then we get down to what the structure looks like for instruction. And basically we're confined by the 6 feet of space, 36 square feet. And that enables us to have 50% of the kids in the building at one time. And because we have 50% of the kids in the building at one time, we went with what is called an A-B configuration. And so we have half the kids on an A day, the other half on a B day, and so forth. We chose Monday as a teacher plan day, even though some schools, districts have found success with having Wednesday that day. What we didn't want was for 5 consecutive days to go by without seeing their teacher. So we really made that based on how important we know frequency is to kids, and understanding our student population. And we are also developed a plan to have students who are working below grade level, who need to be put on a plan to catch up immediately, are able to come on their off days. So some students still in the plan have the ability to come to school 4 days a week. Our most vulnerable students in our specialized special education program classrooms were scheduled to come 4 days a week as well. And so those plans sort of laid all that out. And the video of my presentation to you at the board workshop is posted. Anybody who's interested in seeing the details of what the hybrid plan will look like when we reopen can visit that on BoardBook. And these plans really are just for each building. Each building has their plan. So the template is the same. The information and how the district is going about aligning systems to keep kids safe and support our schools is the same language. The principals have just pulled that language from a central document and placed it in their plans. And then the most recent work we did was to do the updates from the governor's recent guidance, which came out, the days are running together, last week, I believe. And then we have new guidance tomorrow. And so that's great anticipation around that. And so that's generally what the bigger picture looks like. And then you've had a chance to look at the plans in the one central location. And I think what would be helpful to us is first to hear your feedback on that or input. And then if you have any questions for us on that.
Thanks, Scott. I know a lot of work went into each of those. I, was tertiarily associated with the one at Butte Creek through some people I know that were on that committee, and lots of people involved, teachers and classified staff and principals and parents and nurses and parents for nurses and all kinds of people. Any other questions or comments for Scott?
Janet?
A quick clarifying question. I'm looking at your calendar here. I'm wondering under the hybrid plan, those Mondays were a teacher plan day. Now, as that hybrid group starts remotely, is Monday still a plan day?
Well, Monday's still a plan day. We also count Monday as an instruction day because teachers will push out activities and tasks for kids to do on Monday.
Okay.
But teachers are still planning that day, but we have to be sure to make sure that those are pushed out because kids, need to be in school and need to be learning on those days.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. Yeah, I was going to say those blueprints were quite detailed, given that none of us knows what we're doing. And I really had to commend those building principals for trying to anticipate and visualize, with their staff. Okay, so we've got kids coming in this door, and then they're going to go here. And
Yeah.
I mean, you have to sort of play out all of those scenarios to figure out where your traffic flows are getting hung up, or where you have kids who are going to end up collecting in a certain area, and you have to anticipate all those things. I imagine that when, if we can, we move to that hybrid model, there are still going to be tweaks that have to be made because they're going to start seeing things that we could never have expected. So
Yeah,
it was
and
quite
who
the
knows?
job.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. And I'd be the first one to say, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I think nobody thought we'd be in this place right now with so close to the start of the school year and opening up online. But a special shout out to the principals. It truly is amazing how well they know their school communities and their buildings for that matter. And also I think what's really impressive is the amount of teachers that came forward to volunteer their time to serve on these committees and to give their input too. And I just think that's just one of the million reasons why Silver Falls School District is a special place to be. Just the commitment of the adults is truly inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, on a related note, our next item is the draft school year revision that's been proposed. And would you like to share your thoughts as well on that?
Sure. So as we're gearing up to start school online, one of the things that we know, and one of the things that every school district knows across the country is we don't want to repeat what happened in the spring. The crisis education, crisis management, everybody just trying to do the best job they can. And really, it was not ideal. And it wasn't anything that any employee of Silver Falls or any public school employee would choose to do over again. It was just something that happened so fast. We just literally needed to try to put something together. So this time we want to be much more thoughtful. And we've done our best to try to take the input in from our community and to learn from that and to try to come back with a plan that makes sense. And also a plan that's systematic, right? So anytime we start planning for instructional implementation, curriculum types of things, we always have to take certain things into account. And one of those is professional development and training. There are some programmatic issues. We do need a vehicle in order to teach through to the Common Core state standards. And in this case, we also need a platform. And we need a universal single learning management platform that's easy for our parents and our community members to navigate. And so we've managed to do that. We have the platform in place. We have a curriculum to help set our teachers up for success and to support our students. And we are right now working on the professional development framework. And that's where the extra week of pre-service comes in. We can't ask our teachers to do something that we ourselves as administrators cannot provide the scaffolding for or the support for. Just like we would teaching any child, we need to be able to provide that for our adults that are teaching our children. And when we're talking about professional development and training, it means having the supports in place to make that viable, and one of which is having enough time. And so we are proposing bringing the kids back 1 week late to make a 2-week pre-service, so we can put in place enough time for teachers to take the required trainings that they need to implement, say, Edgenuity and our single learning management system, which is Canvas. The other opportunity that we have is to have our classified staff who are working with kids go through the same training as well, because they will be in support roles with those same kids. And so again, it goes back to having the extra time. Another thing that's really important for teachers is we need to give them some choice in terms of their professional development. Teachers know what they need, right? We know as a system what we need to generally have our staff take by way of the technical trainings to be able to have a more global view of how these programs and how this platform will work. But each teacher knows best where they need to work on their own professional development, and we want to be able to provide some choice as well. And an additional week allows us to do that also. And so we're asking for the additional week. It's 4 days actually, because we have a holiday there. We feel we can use that time to the best of our ability. You know, we wish we had more, but we feel that this is going to be substantial because we've got to get learning started. There are a couple of different ways we can solve making back these days. The least advantageous one, in my opinion, is to just extend the school year 4 days. I believe strongly that there's a law of diminishing returns once we get into June. Anybody who's ever spent time as an instructor in June knows exactly what I'm talking about when what that does to student engagement and adult engagement. So that's the least favorable, in my opinion. There's another opportunity to look at some of the days within the school year that are non-student, what we call non-student contact days. We have professional development days, a state in-service days, some conference days. That's okay too. Again, it wouldn't be my first choice just because those are needed also. We're in a modern era of teaching and learning, and those days matter. They really do. So one of the things we're fortunate that at the ODE level, at the state level, they're talking about being a little bit more flexible with how we determine a school year. One of which is identifying up to 180 hours that schools can use to make up for those lost instructional days due to training. And so that is pending approval from ODE, but that is the first choice we'd like to go with. We know it's also the most popular for obvious reasons because we don't get into, you know, the end of June where those instructional days really, really take a hit and we don't get the most out of them that we should. And it preserves some of the training days that we have during the school year and the conference time. So my recommendation is that we go with the 180 hours that the ODE will more than likely approve. If they don't, we'll have to choose another avenue to travel down. But if we went with, say, the second option was just to look at days through the school year, that would take negotiation with our Teachers Association to work that out. And you know, anywhere we can save time and focus on what really matters, I think we need to take advantage of that. All of us would rather, you know, focus our attention on kids and doing making the most out of our time. And I really think it comes from using this resource that we have from the state. And I'm very optimistic that it'll be approved.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great update.
Any questions on that?
So you guys have had the update. It was on Board Book, the proposed calendar. Anybody have any questions or concerns for Scott? No? This comes up later as an action item. So just be aware of that. Scott, when you were speaking, you did remind me of a question that I've heard a couple of times, and it might be useful, like the 1 to 2 minute version of this anyway. I've heard the question, what is the difference between Edgenuity and Canvas? You know, those are two terms that are thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Can you give us a succinct, you know, backdrop for what those words mean?
Yeah, so Canvas is the tool that teachers and parents and students use to communicate. And so it facilitates teachers and students and parents the ability to give written feedback, the ability to submit assignments, the ability to have a central portal to access their classes. It's kind of like the frame of a house, if you will, right? It kind of holds everything in there and allows teacher, student, and parent to have a place where they can go to access information. Now, the program Edgenuity, that's teaching and learning right there. You know, that's a curriculum aligned to Common Core state standards that the teachers use as an instructional resource. And they use Canvas in conjunction with that, because Canvas is more or less the frame that holds the program and allows parents to operate, you know, and collaborate with teacher and their child almost seamlessly. It's also used in all colleges and universities just about in the country. Lori just took her training in it. Shout out to Lori, just took her Canvas training. We will make a module for Canvas available to parents as well as Edgenuity, an Edgenuity component that parents can access for their own learning as well. So the platform is Canvas, and the curriculum is Edgenuity.
Thank you.
So Canvas is also called an LMS, a learning management system.
I've also, and you tell me if I got this right, I've described it to somebody as Edgenuity being the what and Canvas being the how, if that's
very good.
a way of,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks. Glad I had it right. I wasn't actually certain, so I'm glad you explained it. Okay. Any other comments on the schedule?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Canvas is a really nice way of delivering education, and it makes it, it's very sleek and refined, and it does make it more dynamic. If that makes sense, how you present and how you give that to the students. So it really is a very satisfying stage for education.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's coming from a practitioner. Lori teaches at the college level, and you know, adopting Canvas is a big deal, because going forward, our school district, Silver Falls School District, will have one singular learning management system. In the spring, we must add 10. So we had Seesaw, and trust me, I love Seesaw, you know, and I know kindergartner teachers love it too. And it's still a good platform. It still is. I think the problem became that parents were having to learn 3 to 4 different platforms to help their children. So it was Google Classroom for one, it was Seesaw for the primary kids, and then it was, you know, something else was Zoom or Google Meet, and that just becomes so overwhelming for a family. And that was the compelling reason we need to identify one platform. And so as kids go from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, it's 13 years of getting used to Canvas. Then once they hit college, university level, or some other school after high school, they got one less thing to worry about. So that truly was the compelling reason.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, 6D, we have a policy discussion, and this is specifically our executive session policy. And this came up because we've been considering the question of recording executive sessions for the purpose of just having that documented. So should we ever need to reference them again in the future, we would have access to them. There's some pros and cons to it. You know, you have to store it very carefully because it's protected information. You have to be able to maintain access, but still provide access when necessary, things like that. During some conversation around this topic, the question came up about whether we needed to discuss exec session policy BDC. And so I wanted to, you know, sort of have this be the opportunity to publicly discuss that policy and whether or not, you know, this board has any concerns with regard to it. I did reach out to OSBA, and I did speak specifically to their policy development expert, or one of them, regarding this particular question. And his response was he did not recommend making any updates to BDC based on what he saw in ours, which is very similar to the template that OSBA offers. And he suggested that typically, boards do or don't, but you don't have to update the policy based on that decision. In fact, he said it's often decided by the secretary or the superintendent or the board chair. So those are some backdrop to the conversation that I had. Having said that, the fact that there's even any question or concern, I want to make sure we have a good conversation and, ultimately consider whether or not we wish to do anything.
Jonathan, if I could just, you've been a little glitchy with your internet tonight. You did pause out momentarily. I caught what you were saying, but just wanted to make you aware of that. And I don't know if any of the other board members need that repeated or not. I understood what you were saying, but just wanted to point that out to you.
Appreciate that. Anybody else need the repeating part?
I don't need it repeated, but I do have some comments on our policy. I was going to say that I think there needs to be a little bit of wordsmithing on the policy, just to clean up a few areas. And I know that I can make those recommendations and send them on to Scott. So I do think there is some streamlining that can be recommended. I'm also happy to hear that we're considering recording. I think that's very important for us.
Great, thank you. Yes, Janet.
So nothing in particular about the wording of the policy, although what I would look forward to when we get some additional training is a better understanding of our right to meet with an attorney. There have been times where we have understood sort of our attorney-client privilege to be an adequate or sufficient reason to meet an executive session. And I'm not sure that I understand whether or not that's the case because it's not explicitly said here. There are explicit sort of subject matter designated here, but there is nothing that says, you could just basically meet an executive session to talk to your attorney. I suspect that's not the case. And so I guess I would just, hopefully we'll still be able to get some additional training with either Spencer or an attorney or the Ethics Commission or someone who can help us navigate that, because I think that has been a little bit of a slippery slope. But and I also support recording those sessions. Other than that, I don't have anything specific on the policy as it stands right now. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and just maybe a little bit of background on that question. I fully support the additional training. I would love to hear more people share their thoughts on whether we can speak to the attorney. One thing that I can share is that when that question came up the last time, and I asked that question of an attorney, of a school district attorney, the response was that, and I don't have it in front of me, all the different reasons, but I'm trying to remember which one it was, but it's the one where it's content not subject to public inspection or something to that effect. That his response was that by definition, anything protected under attorney-client privilege is not subject to public inspection, and therefore that was the appropriate, option to move into executive session. So I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing the background that I understand as it relates to that, so that everybody on the board and listening can know what I know. But I do fully support your idea of additional training and making sure we're doing that right.
Yeah, Jonathan?
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I really don't have anything wrong with the policy as it stands, but just kind of a general comment. It's, as long as I've been on the board, people wonder what goes on in executive session, and it's really popped up a lot lately. With the tone of there's shenanigans going on there. It's improperly used. The safety valve for that, and something I've noticed the past couple of years, is the lack of the press. The press can come to an executive session and they're the safety guard. They're the safety valve. They can sit in the back of the room and they can judge, hey, are these people talking about stuff that they shouldn't be talking about here? And, in my earlier years on the board, virtually most of them, well over half, I'd say, there was a member of the press in those, if it was more than just a sick leave. And now they're not. And I think that, I think that might be part of the failure or why questions are arisen. There isn't that public referee, so to speak, of the press there. I think that would, I wish we saw the press in executive session more, and I think that people's concerns would be alleviated. And that's my opinion on the matter. And I don't think I'm not in favor of recording them, but if you or Scott feels that it should be, that's fine. But I'm not going to die on that hill. But my opinion is to not record it.
Thanks for the thoughts there, Tom. In my time on the board, I'm pretty sure only once or maybe twice as a reporter been present in an exec session. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll just give my opinion because I think that's kind of what you're asking for, Jonathan. I think recording is fine. I think that's fine. I'm not sure that we need to vote on it. I think that well, maybe we do. Maybe I don't think we there's anything in our policy that precludes recording. I agree with Tom that I think the press should be there more often, and I also agree with the idea of making sure that we are really clear about our executive session. So, always welcome more training around that.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't even know if more training will take care of the ambiguity when it comes to executive session. I have never been more confused than I have the last year when it comes to executive session. Things that for the last 10 years was gospel is not anymore. And it seems to change subject to subject. So you almost have to meet with an attorney beforehand to let us know, because I can guarantee you we are not going to be prepared for the next meeting and we'll be in trouble one way or the other. That's the way I feel.
It's not an invalid. You're right.
Yeah. And recording, I don't think it matters one way or the other. Generally, in the last 10 years, the majority has been in favor of something. So, if somebody wanted to say something and said, well, we didn't say it, well, the majority can testify, yes, you did, or you didn't. So, I don't really see the validity of recording and going through all of the hoopla to protect it. And that's just a whole nother string of safeguards that we have to have in place, and we're more than likely going to break it. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Irv. Appreciate it. Any other thoughts from anybody on this?
I think the importance to recording is that it captures the actual point in time of what's being discussed among the person presenting and the board members. I think that's critical. And we know due to a lawsuit that we lost that there were issues there. And I certainly would want to do everything to avoid that again, because it isn't as straightforward, I think, as we always believed. And we're now using a best practice mode. And I think would include recording.
Yeah, we did a little bit of digging, and there's a number of districts that do record, and there's a number of that don't, right? So it's not universal.
Right.
A lot of the bigger districts do, I suspect, because of resources and whatnot. There are also more high-profile things that probably take place in some of those districts. I kind of, I'll share my 2 cents. I kind of hemmed and hawed on this one a little bit, mostly from a logistical standpoint. I don't have any qualms with it being recorded, but like Herb, it felt like kind of a headache to manage, to be frank. And I didn't want a solution in search of a problem, but the more we started kind of talking about it, as far as, we've had these things that have come up about exec session, we've had questions, we've had several of them, we've had board members who have concerns about them, we have questions about what goes on, and all these different reasons. I think ultimately I landed on yeah, let's just record them, because I've got nothing to hide. So I certainly think that gives us the ability, should something legal come up in the future, to reference it should we have to. And, so that's kind of where I landed on it. And as far as voting, I would entertain, it's not an action item tonight, at least I don't think it was listed as one. It's not an action item, I don't think. But we need to, I would entertain the idea of us sort of showing our support for the idea. Because, well, maybe we don't have to. The fact that there was even any concern at all tells me that if we sort of voiced our vote as a board on this, to direct Debbie and Scott and Dan to sort of set up the infrastructure to do this, that, we'd be speaking, I think, as one voice then. So that being said, if anybody was interested, seeing how we don't have it as an action item, I'm double checking to make sure I'm right. Yeah, we don't. So I would entertain a motion right now, if somebody would like to make one, that we instruct our superintendent and our board secretary to begin setting up the infrastructure of recording exec sessions. Yes, Jennifer.
I move to instruct the superintendent and board secretary to begin planning for recordings of executive sessions.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you, guys. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, let's go ahead and vote. There's 6 of us here. Debbie, are you able to call out names?
Yes, I'm here.
There you go.
Jonathan,
I vote yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes?
Tom,
No.
Lori,
Yes.
and Irv. Irv, thumbs up, thumbs down.
No, Debbie, sorry.
Thank you. That's 4-2.
Thank you, guys. So we'll begin looking into it. We'll work on setting it up, and we'll keep you posted. It won't be overnight. There's some infrastructure that has to happen, and there's a lot going on in the district right now, as we are all well aware. So, but having had this discussion tonight, I feel better about moving forward with it. So thank you. Okay, we are moving right along into a number of policies that are up for first reading. These are primarily in response to COVID, but I don't know, Dan or Scott, if one of you wanted to maybe just give a brief overview of why these are coming up for discussion tonight.
Dan, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can speak to probably the easiest one to start with would be, of course, I just closed board book on accident. So would be the policy on retirement. Let me pull board book back up so I can look on that. As you probably are aware, Senate Bill 1049 passed last year. which changed the retirement rules under which people can retire from the PERS system, and they're no longer limited to 1,039 hours per year, essentially half time. And so, so what we've done is look around at a lot of other districts to see how other districts were implementing this policy, this change, and so. And then we went to OSBA to see, is there a policy update? And essentially the only thing we're striking out is that, or recommending, is the superintendent will develop, it used to say administrative regulations. So this would be how the superintendent would handle someone wanting to retire and rehire. And so the OSBA recommended language change there is that we will not have administrative regulations. We will not have ARs, that the superintendent will develop procedures, which is probably just more of a technical change of how we're going to do that. And we have developed some procedures, several different members from all aspects of our, from administrative to licensed to classified, have explored this option, and we do provide them with the procedures, and I will provide those to you before the second reading so that all board members can look at what those procedures are. The public, it'll be posted to board books, so public can see what those are regarding what happens, or what's the procedure if someone seeks to retire from PERS and yet continue employment. So this is for the board policy. It just kind of changes the place where the procedure happens. It goes from an AR to a procedures, and ours is actually kind of is a 2-page FAQ, a frequently asked questions about the procedures. So it's written in pretty easy to understand terms of how we'll handle those requests.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any questions on that particular policy? The next one is that is the one that's the COVID-19 related leave policy. And so this one, we've also have some ARs related to this. And so this is recommended from OSBA as well. And I'm not going to go, there's a lot of technical things in here, but in essence, during the initial closure, basically from the closure through the 30th of June, employees who may have had a COVID-related illness, I'll use it in a broad sense, a family member, maybe an exposure, maybe forced to quarantine, something along those lines, and were unable to work, their sick leave was not impacted by that. There was essentially folks' sick leave was not, they did not have to use their personal sick leave if they had what was deemed a COVID-related absence. And that was blanketed essentially from the governor's executive order. And so what we're trying to do here is, this is recommended from OSBA, is so if an employee moving forward has a COVID-related leave, there are some federal provisions that protect people from having to use their personal sick leave in order to, and there's some limits in the ARs, but essentially provide some additional protections for folks if they have a COVID-related absence. That's kind of a broad sense of what we're trying to do here. And we have had a couple of employees who, since June 30th, there are year-round classified folks that have had a reason to take a COVID-related illness, and we actually went ahead, because this is some federal laws that we're going to follow the federal laws first, even if the policy is not in place, to make sure that we're taking care of our employees. So I did not see the ARs attached on the board book, but we'll certainly get those to you. This policy is coming straight to you recommended from OSBA.
Right. Okay, the other one that was on here is BFF, which Lori, I believe, I think you're the one that brought this forward the first time.
Right.
Maybe I'm mistaken on that.
Yeah, BFF is what OSBA considers an optional policy. But I think given where we're at right now, globally, it's probably a good one to consider adopting. And it's called the suspension of policies. And it says, in the event of an emergency or special circumstances, the operation of any individual policy section or sections of board policy, including those governing its own operational procedure, may be temporarily suspended by a majority of the board members at any regular, special, or emergency meeting. The suspension, however, does not apply to any section of board policy that may be established by law, collective bargaining agreement, or other contract.
Right.
So it is optional, but I think it's, I did speak with Scott on this, and many districts have this policy. I think it would be fair to consider this to adopt for our district.
I'm glad you brought it forward. I agree for what it's worth. And I think it was, given everything that's gone on in the last 6 months, it feels like a good ad. It's sort of a just in case. Yes, Jennifer.
I just wanted to follow up with Dan's comment. I do think the AR is on board book
Okay.
for that COVID. So I think
Okay.
we have it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, everybody. Unless there's further questions, we're going to keep going. All right. We are ready for the administrator and staff reports and superintendent report from Mr. Scott Drew is up next.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. And we're at a point now where we've in terms of planning, in terms of sort of navigating this global crisis, and and how that affects us working in public schools and in public school districts. We have our reopening plans, which have now been completed. So when kids come back to school, we can go to these plans and immediately set up safe procedures for kids to come back and to learn in brick and mortar buildings. We also have a fully developed contingency plan, which is now the plan, which is starting in online learning, either in a hybrid online learning environment or a fully online learning environment for the year. We've purchased a new K-12 program as a vehicle to teach to the Common Core standards in an online environment, district-wide platform, which is Canvas, what we just talked about. We finished a town hall meeting that was just the level of questions that were asked was just outstanding, and we're working around the clock to try to get answers to the rest of those questions out to our community. We've gotten most of those out. This week is the start of town hall meetings by principals in their school communities, and those will go on each week following until we welcome kids back. And so that's been a really full 6 weeks worth of work to get to this point. And during that time, we have hired a new director of teaching and learning, Leslie Roach, a former principal now of Robert Frost, exceptional instructional leader. Really looking forward to working with her. And we've also made significant steps forward to start the development of our Therapeutic and Social Services Center, which is a critical part of the funding we've received from the Student Success Act. It's advanced thinking. I don't think it's being done anywhere else that I know of in the country. And we intend to turn it into a national model for school reform. And if we're going to get to 100% student graduation, by gosh, this is going to be the vehicle how we're going to get there. So we secured a space. We'll be moving into that space in December, but we're moving full steam ahead as of right now to make sure that we identify the students in that program, that we go through and figure out which staff need to be assigned, and all of the fun logistical stuff that needs to happen to make this program successful. So I couldn't be happier. Jen Hannon is leading that charge, and my hat's off to Jen. I only got to work with her for a month, but it'll be so interesting to see what she comes up with as we move forward. I just can't be happier for the Silverton school community that we can now look these students in the eye, these students who need more support, who have not responded to a traditional education system and what it has to offer, that we can finally look at these kiddos and say that we're doing everything we can to meet you where you're at. And so that's extremely exciting. Other than that, we've just made a few adjustments at the central office and done a little bit of reorganizing and ready to share that out with our principals at our Leadership Institute the next couple of days. And you know, it's been a full 6 or 7 weeks so far. Maybe it's closer to 6 weeks. And we're also looking at making sure that our schools, we have a couple of openings. Silvercrest has an opening for principal, and we're considering, and so does Robert Frost, and we're considering interim folks at that time, because one of the things we will be changing in the Silver Falls School District is the way that we hire our leaders going forward. And that will take a little bit of time to get that selection process up and running. It'll be far more rigorous than anyone's used to. But it has to be. To be a modern leader in public education, we need to make sure that we're out there recruiting the best and the brightest. And so Silvercrest and Robert Frost will be the standards by which we will hold all principal candidates going forward to that process. And I'll be involving some of you as board members, we've already spoken, but I'll be bringing you along for the ride and how we set up that process. Very inclusive process and very strategic at the same time. And we'll take a fair amount of thought to make sure that we are developing something that gives us the operational data that allows us to arrive at a decision and come up with the leadership traits that we're looking for here in Silver Falls. So lots of good things happening.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, amazing. Anybody have any questions?
Jennifer?
It's not a question. It's more of a, I guess, just a bolding of the idea. Is Hope Academy, am I using the right name? Is that what we're calling it? About Hope Academy. This must have been February, pre-COVID. I was having a discussion with somebody who is a former director of special services for a school district. And I was telling them about this idea that was in our SIA plan. And they thought that it was super innovative, and they were going to, you know, wanting to send their own kid to a program like this. And so I just wanted to underscore what Scott said about having a really desirable program. I'm really excited, and I'm just really thankful that we got some of the SIA money that we were looking forward to in order to fund it. So looking forward to seeing the progress on that. Thanks for the update.
And just to add to that, I think the most exciting thing is that the way that we will be serving kids will stretch far beyond Silver Falls. And we have neighboring districts that will have the opportunity to take advantage of the system that we set up and the services that we can provide. And just a shout out also to Jen Hannon. This is a concept that was hers from the get-go, even at the very early stages. And when I came to Silver Falls, it's the first thing I saw when I was reading through the SIA application. That's the one I circled first. And it was very, very apparent to me that we needed to prioritize that section of the plan first, especially because of the times that we're in. So it's because of the number of kids that we thought we were going to serve with that program almost certainly has quadrupled at this point. And only will continue to grow exponentially the longer our kids are out of brick and mortar buildings.
Yeah, great points. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, Steve, you're up next with the financial update.
Good evening, everybody. Before I started, I just wanted to echo what Scott said about the Hope Academy and just the how impressed I was with the thinking around the formation of that, because there isn't really anything that does exactly the way this is designed. So Jennifer, I just want to say she did a wonderful job with this, and I'm really excited that, and we knew that we may not even get any SIA funds, and to know that looks like we're going to get 33% in the first year and allow this to take off is huge. So really excited about that. For an August report from me, usually it's not much, but the list just kept growing, and I guess it just kind of goes along with the times right now. So first is the July financial statement, which is just as would be expected. It's a double payment for state school fund and our lowest month of expenses. So it's kind of a fun one to report on. So everything looks fine there. But the transition on this is that, of course, the double payment, which represents 16.67% of our state school fund payment for the year, is, of course, as I stated last month, based on the $9 billion biennial appropriation from the state. And as you know, the special legislative session began today to discuss and act upon either the proposed or possibly amended co-chairs rebalancing plan that was rolled out in mid-July that we shared. As of right now, it doesn't look like they got to a vote today. We were told it could take 2 or 3 days this week to get through that because there might be some policy issues that they discuss. So as of right now, no news on that, but we would expect here in the next 24 to 72 hours that they'll vote on the rebalancing plan. And we'll let you know as soon as that is complete. Of course, just to recap, the rebalance plan calls for the $9 billion funding level, state school fund, 100% of high school success, or what's called Measure 98 dollars, and 33% of the original SSA or student investment account allocation. So of course ours was $3 million, and that would be $1 million instead. So we'll let you know on that. I can tell you though, in terms of this, all the information coming out with regards to the budget, I believe last month I reported that we had received our final allocation for CARES Act ESSER dollars that come directly through to the school districts through ODE. The primary part that comes to schools, ours was $362,000. We were able to fill out the application that came out, I think it was the end of July, and since our last board meeting, and it had been approved for our plan, which was mostly centered around comprehensive distance learning. So that was $362,000. The exciting additional news that came out is we knew that there were some other pockets of CARES Act money. And on July 29th, ODE came out with what was called the CDL grant program, not commercial driver's license, but the Comprehensive Distance Learning Grant Program, which took 3 other pockets of money for a total statewide of $28 million. They took the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund, a little bit more of the ESSER that they had left over, and some coronavirus relief fund dollars, and they combined it to provide some additional supports for K-12 for comprehensive distance learning specifically. Now, they took these dollars, and their primary focus was to create a funding formula that would where poverty, ELL, and remote and rural learning for needs would be met, but at the same time not to influence where results would result in odd outcomes. So, for example, a small rural district with 500 students would receive more funding than Portland Public Schools. They wanted to weight more towards the rural schools, but not create something that was totally off kilter, so to speak. So, with all those criteria that they were trying to do and creating a funding formula for $28 million for 197 school districts, we had no idea what we would get. Well, last week, we found out that we were going to receive $136,000 for this round, this CDL grant, which was more than I thought. I was pleased with that. So between the two awards, we're receiving $498,000 in CARES Act money between these two. So of course, this program also has a grant application, and we're expecting to receive that tomorrow or Wednesday, and we'll have a couple of weeks to turn that around. But essentially, these two funding sources really do provide the cover we need, to have advanced forward with acquiring Canvas and also Edgenuity, as well as additional devices we may need, additional bandwidth and internet connectivity for families that need support, or other things that we need to make sure that all kids are connected and learning every day. So it's really a huge deal to be able to secure hopefully now the $9 billion, as well as the additional CARES Act money. Now, we have already had 3 meetings with a FEMA representative as well. Melanie and I have been working with them. And since they didn't really cover comprehensive distance learning anyway, the CARES Act money, it worked out well to slot those resources there. And with the FEMA, that's really going to help us with the PPE and those types of things. So we have some money that will come in for that as well. So anyway, so I feel like we've received another $136,000 was a nice additional support for us that we weren't necessarily expecting. Is there any questions on that before I change topics? I know there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes, Jen.
Janet, yeah.
Steve, what was the amount of the FEMA money? Did you give us that?
We are assembling cost data for them, and there's a whole process to where they tell us this is eligible, this is not eligible, that type of thing. Okay. And there's windows that that we can apply for. So for our first window, we've identified March 13th through June 30th, and we've been sending them cost information of PPE we purchased during that time, as well as we spent over $10,000 to get the mandatory child care center set up in case we needed to activate that. That's another eligible cost that we could be reimbursed for with the FEMA dollars. But basically the FEMA support is open all the way until whenever the pandemic is declared over. So we'll have these basically kind of quarterly windows of time, and the maximum allotment for any quarter of time would be $131,000.
Okay.
But it's a long process. Like I said, we've already had 3 conference calls with them. We're sending them data. There's a portal now we can send information. And to be quite honest, FEMA is also really figuring this out as they go as well. Usually they're coming into communities and dealing with natural disasters and things like that. And so this is a little bit different. So they're still kind of forming some of their guidance as they go. So, and we can't duplicate support from them that we may have received, somewhere else. So for example, we also received early on a $20,000 grant from SAFE, which helped us with some of our initial PPE costs and other related costs at the outbreak at the start of the pandemic. Obviously, we can't also claim that on the FEMA side as well. So we do have some different avenues of money from the state and federal level that's helping us right now.
That makes for fun accounting, I'm sure, when you have to track.
There's a lot going on. There's a special sub area.
Don't commingle anything.
Yeah, we have a special sub area just for COVID, and it's It's has 19 on the end, so it makes it a little
All right.
easier to filter out in the system. So,
Wow. Well, better you than me. Thank you.
yeah, you bet. One thing I was going to mention also about the special session was it was still debated as of last night how much they were going to talk about policy. And one of the things that could get talked about, but I don't know if they did today, was the lack of the liability coverage, because that was being pushed to have the legislature discuss that issue. So the third major item I have is something that came up last week, and I was still getting information on it on Friday. So there's not a book link on this, but we'll link it tomorrow morning. I did send out an email to the budget committee Friday with some information. But of course, when we have a million other things going on, the general obligation bond refinance came back into play. Our friends at Piper Sandler reached out to us, Lauren, and said, not only is the rate good, which it was before, but now the margin is good, very good actually. So the bottom line is we have 7 years left on our general obligation bond, and of course this is the bond that's for the high school building. We have the opportunity to save Silver Falls School District taxpayers over $700,000 over the last 7 years of the bond. So we'll attach that one-page savings analysis as well as the new schedule to get this closed on board book tomorrow. And like I said, I sent that out Friday to the budget committee so that everyone knew. But basically, we had you all adopted a resolution to proceed with this on October 14th, and that's still valid. Of course, we had to put a pause on this in the spring just because as we were working on the preliminary official statement and all the other work that had to be done, we ran up against the fact that the margins were not favorable, and of course the market was pretty volatile. And so we were right up to the point where we had done a ton of legwork, but we were up against the point where we needed to get our Moody's rating call and go through that whole process, which is a $20,000 process. So we were advised to go ahead and stop, and they would reach out to us when things look better, and now's the time. But because we did so much legwork, our window to be able to close is now condensed. The schedule that they've laid out has us closing on September 17th. So basically we could get this done in about 5 weeks. This will include sending out a final draft of the preliminary official statement for all board members to review. And that looks like that's going to happen here by next week. So we're working on getting that finalized. So I'm excited about the opportunity and hope that everything remains in a good position for us to get this done. Any questions on that topic?
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve. Not really a question, but a comment. But thanks for, I mean, to save, to refinance and save $700,000. That's something special. Especially with only 7 years left on the bond, and that's the number that's really great to me, because we've got some long-term facilities needs, and we pretty much have that huge high school, paid for. Finally, we're getting close. The lights at the end.
Yeah, we are getting close, and just for verification for everyone here in the public listening, this is not something that is going. It saves us over $700,000, but this isn't a savings that would help our general fund or our budget directly, capital project fund. This is direct savings to the taxpayer over the course of the final 7 years of the bond. So that's awesome. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. The last item up for bids here is it's on the action items, but I just wanted to explain it, and hopefully the background page helped a little bit. We have a new HRA plan that needs to be adopted. It's called the HRA VEBA. It stands for Health Reimbursement Arrangement. And the VEBA stands for Voluntary Employees Beneficiary Association Trust. They're the ones who run it. And it's a company specifically that services public employees in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And it's a tax-free arrangement for folks that opt out of their health insurance for a place to put their funds and can use for health insurance needs and so forth. We have not had an opt-out provision for any of our employee groups, an optional opt-out up to this point, but we did negotiate that with our certified union when we settled at the end of January. And for those who choose to opt out, they do have to prove they have other coverage, which they'll do. We have our open enrollment window coming up here starting this weekend, August 15th through September 10th with OEBB. And they have to show that they have other coverage. And then they're eligible for a $400 per month employer contribution into this HRA VEBA plan. So the VEBA, the trust, basically they require, besides all the paperwork that we had to fill out, they required a board resolution. So that's why we bring that forward to you this evening and ask for adoption. I think that's it, unless there's any questions specifically on this. What's that, Jonathan?
No, it's interesting. I appreciate you explaining it. I read the background, but
Sorry.
I guess the only question I have is this more like an HSA or is it like some other type of account? I'm still a little unclear, I guess. Not that in the end, if you guys are recommending it, I certainly support it.
I'm sorry, did you say what now? Is it a different what now? A different kind of account? Is that what you said?
Is it like an HSA or is it like some other kind of account?
Well, it has some similarities to an HSA, but there are differences. And obviously HSA is specifically attached to a high deductible health plan, whereas this HRA VEBA is not specifically attached to a health plan. This is someone that would be opting out of a health plan and would have another vehicle that they would have that's actually fully portable for them to use. In whichever manner they need to for health insurance needs. And they could actually use it for, retirement health premiums for Medicare supplement, those types of things as well. But the key is that it's, some people ask why not just a 403B, for example? The bottom line is that our Cruth Compliance Consulting, who does consulting for most school districts in the state on 403Bs and these types of matters, basically is you have to provide, if this is an optional thing, which it is for them to opt out, you have to keep the option for the opt-out completely tax-free. Now at the surface, it appears 403Bs are tax-free. They are, with the money going in, but when you take the money out, it's taxable. And so to have an optional benefit that's taxable when it comes out, basically could put the employer contributions for all employees, contributions for health insurance for everyone in the plan, could make that subject to taxability. And that's just something, obviously, we don't want to do. So I have a lot of, there's a website that's very informative, HRA VEBA website, that has a lot of great information and an FAQ page. And I can send that to everyone. We could also link that on the website that answers a lot of those questions.
Thank you, Steve. You did a great job. I mean, I think I have a much better appreciation now for what this is trying to do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Stephen?
And I'll just add to that, Jonathan. I had a HRA VEBA in a previous school district, and it operates very similarly to an HSA. It's simply, as Steve said, because of the taxable implications potentially, it's just another avenue. But I think I think for most folks, they'll find it very similar to what they're accustomed to with an HSA.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Steve? Okay. I keep getting told by Zoom that my internet connection is unstable. So if you ever can't hear me, just remind me that I need to say it over again, please. Right, that takes us to board reports. Anybody have anything they wish to share?
I do. Regarding, let me see how to, I should have given this more thought. One of the things that I'd like to see on the agenda at our next work session is the agenda item of doing a first read. This is regarding policy on DBEA. We have provided, several of us have provided with recommendations, and Mr. Drew has reviewed it, and he has brought back his insight. And so it is ready for a first reading. Also, I would like to see some more discussion on BF to perhaps narrow that down a little bit more. So if we could put that on the agenda for the work session, that would be great. I was speaking with Scott, and what I'd like to do is set up a vehicle in which we can have a subcommittee to work on these policies, make the recommendations, and then when they need to come back for a first reading or what have you, there's a little place for them to be so it doesn't detract from the other things that go on with the board and the agenda. So how does that sound to you, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, thank you. They sound like good topics for maybe the next meeting, right? So yeah, I appreciate it. Let me know, send me specifics, and we can, we can see where it falls in.
Does it need to be made as a motion to secure a spot on the agenda?
I believe, I need to look into that. I think we can actually have somebody raise something after the agenda is posted. I don't know about having it as a motion tonight. It'd be new to me doing it that way. Not familiar with that, so. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Janet.
Oh, sorry. No, I just, in lieu of, I guess, a vote, I just wanted to express my support for that. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Lori, DBEA is the budget committee policy. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I think that would be timely to be able to talk about that at the work session in advance of our selection of those new budget committee members. That I think, is that happening at our regular meeting in September? Am I pacing that out?
That sounds right. I know it's
Give or
posted
take.
right now, so we're getting, people that are interested are going to let us know now. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I like the idea of there being a, which I think is what we've done in the past, a policy, sort of a superintendent's policy committee that Lori could serve on as our designee. And then we could provide, input, and then they can come back with recommendations. And I think that sounds like it would be easier than sort of litigating that as a board, as a group, trying to work our way through language and all of that from scratch. So, for what it's worth, I support that idea as well.
No, I think I agree. Yeah, without wading into next agenda.
Oh, sorry.
Well, and thank you, Janet. I wanted to say, Jonathan, that I'd like to see it set up in such a way so we're not, working sort of a tug of war with what goes on the agenda and what doesn't, but just to make it more productive so it can move forward. And that's why I was asking if a motion should be made to secure that discussion. Because I never quite know if it will or won't be until later on.
Yeah, I mean, Scott and I, and we work together to put the agenda together and base it on sort of the things that feel like they're top priority for the meeting and what we think will fit, et cetera, et cetera. But rest assured, we've heard that request. So. Okay, any other board reports? All right, we are to the second public comment period. If anybody would like to address us tonight, hopefully you've maybe already sent a request, but if not, please do it now and we'll get you online. I don't know, Debbie or Drew, did any of you get a request?
Emails, no Q&A. And if, just as a reminder, people can go to the right side, roll over their name and hold up their hand. That would be a third method.
I have not received any requests.
Okay. Well, wait another 5 or 10 seconds, I guess. But if we don't hear anything, then we'll proceed to our action items for tonight.
Jonathan, one last thing regarding policy, and I wasn't sure where to insert this, but is it possible to have policy as a standing item at a work session? So as these things come up, we can give attention to it, and in some cases there may be crickets. But we do have a number of policies that do need consideration. And my concern is that if it's not on the agenda, then it gets pushed down the road. And I'd rather not have that happen. I'd like to sort of have it built in a way so we can, as a subcommittee, work forward and process these accordingly without it weighting down other aspects of the meetings and the board.
Right. I mean, I think it's, go ahead, Jennifer. You're muted, Jennifer.
Oh. To me, it sounds reasonable that if the superintendent's policy committee has a policy that's ready to go, proposed, an actual document, if that is received, we're trying to get the agenda out by Wednesday, the Wednesday before. So, maybe if there can be an agreement about when the policy is received, whether it goes on the agenda or not, I think that, to me, that makes sense. If it's ready to go, let's put it up, let's put it on. If it's not ready to go, then it makes sense to wait until the next opportunity.
Right.
Maybe what we could do also, Jonathan, is if we could have it by Monday, that would be very helpful, because Dan's late. Dan, Jennifer, and Jonathan and I meet on that Monday to set the agenda. It'd be great to have that just because what happens is otherwise we set the agenda and then we're constantly having to add things to an agenda we already set. And we're really just trying to be more systematic with how we get these types of things out.
Right.
Thank you, Scott, for that. That helps clarify. Because my concern has been, I felt like, Jonathan, I did meet the Wednesday due date, and with some discourse that I had with OSBA and Spencer Lewis, and then to not have that considered for the agenda was a little underwhelming. So that's why I'm bringing it up, and I'm trying to back up the car and park it a little bit differently each time as I move forward. But that's where one of my concerns was. So,
Lori, can I ask, did you have a policy ready to propose?
I had some questions. I was considering discussion, and there was some information from OSBA that we were waiting, I would say, and it did come in on Wednesday, but I think Monday is a great deadline to know about and to follow. So.
Yeah, these are changes that we're kind of in the process of undertaking, right? I mean, to be fair, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have said Monday, right? Because we're just kind of working through that. So in fairness, you probably hadn't heard that until just now.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore that having an actual proposal is pretty important. So I'm not sure what we would have discussed. The email from Spencer Lewis, is that what we should have discussed, or an actual policy? So to me, that was the confusion. It's like, well, what are we discussing?
Right. And as I said to you already, you know, by putting it off till the work session, it gives us a chance to figure out the answers to that question, make sure we have our ducks in a row to have a productive conversation. Okay. Any requests that came in, Debbie or free? Okay. With that, we are up to our action items. We have 10A, superintendent evaluation, and we did discuss it, and I got to the point of recommending a motion, and thank you, Janet, for reminding me we have that later. But the same recommendation stands, right? So if somebody feels like we're in a position to approve, and we can do them one at a time, I think Jennifer suggested that, the working with OSBA and the timeline is separate items. Anyway, I would at this point accept a motion to do one of them or both.
I move to adopt the 2020 to 2021 superintendent evaluation timeline.
So moved.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion about it? Further discussion? We moved and seconded. And at this point, Debbie, would you call out the vote?
I will. Jonathan,
I vote yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Irv.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. So the second piece we'll call the OSBA standards that are sort of corollary to that.
I move to adopt the 2020 OSBA superintendent evaluation standards for the year 2020 to 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
I think Irv got there first.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this stuff? No. Debbie, go ahead.
Yes. Jonathan,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Irv.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So we'll, as a reminder, Jennifer has volunteered to be point person on the superintendent evaluation this year, and I'm sure we're working with Sarah and others to help make sure we have this kind of squared away. Thank you. Next up, we have the revised school calendar, the proposals on board book. We discussed it earlier. That explained the reason behind it. At this point, I would accept a motion to approve the revised school calendar.
I move to approve the revised 2020 to 2021 school year calendar.
Yeah.
Second.
And second, thanks, Tom. Any further discussion? All right, Debbie?
Jonathan,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Irv.
Yes.
All in favor.
Thanks, everybody. And the topic that's next is the HRA VIBA plan, the one that Steve just explained to us. Thank you, Steve. And I would accept a motion to approve the plan. I think there was even a recommended motion in the draft.
I move that the resolution be adopted to establish a health reimbursement arrangement plan for the benefit of Silver Falls School District employees.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Thank you. So, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Right, Debbie?
Jonathan,
Vote yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Irv.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That moves us to 11, just sort of a placeholder for other items. Are there any other items we need to discuss?
Jonathan, were we going to adopt policy BFF?
Thank you, but we cannot because it's first reading. So
Okay.
we're
Very
not
good.
able. Any other items?
Jonathan, that brings up just a question I had. So will, at the next work session, will we do a second reading and an adoption of those policies? Is that my understanding? I just want to make sure I get you the additional information in time regarding the retirement plan.
Yeah, we're going to for sure have it on there. I need to double check. It seems like there's a reason we can do 2, but normally it's 3. And I need to double check and make sure we're following within policy guidelines on that.
I think
Yeah, the policy allows it under, time sensitive circumstances.
But yes, it will certainly be on the agenda. And if we can, and it sounds like we can.
I would say that just the
Yeah,
BFF that Lori mentioned and the COVID-19 related would need to be expedited. The slight word change in the retirement is probably not time sensitive.
Okay. It's also really mine.
So we can expect those 2 then to be second reads and potentially items or probable act for the work session, even though we usually don't.
Jennifer froze.
Yep, she's currently free. There you are, Jennifer. You kind of froze mid-sentence there.
I guess I just wanted to make sure that we're all kind of in agreement that we should expect that we will be getting that second read and having an action item during the work session, even though that's not usually how we do it.
That's correct. Okay. Any other item? Okay. Well, without objection, we will move to adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.